At the current oil prices in Kenya, taxes and levies constitute half of what Kenyans pay at the pump. You can imagine that. When you are spending 170 shillings per litre, half of that goes into taxes and levies. Landing cost is below 50% of what we pay. And it is that taxes and levies that has gotten an increase when the global oil prices were falling. So I want to demand and at the same time request the leadership of this country. You must stop all the meetings, your political meetings that are happening now. Gather and find a solution to the imminent supply chain disruptions in fuel in Kenya and the imminent price disruptions in Kenya. And I want to say this without batting of an eye, that Kenyans are not going to accept any story around Iran if we still have VAT capped at 16% of fuel, and if we still have the 7 shillings being collected by government. The remedial measure that the government must do immediately without waiting is that the same way they added the 7 shillings of fuel levy through a gazette notice, now a time has come for them to reciprocate to Kenyans. Kenyans have been paying this additional VAT for the last 3 years. Kenyans have been paying the additional fuel levy for the last many months when the global oil prices were falling. Now that there is a reversal of that, it is now on the side of government to also reciprocate by cutting VAT from the current 16% to even 0, and also thinking about how to denounce and rescind the 7 shillings fuel levy that was added in the year 2024. That has to happen. And because many times we talk to these guys in government and they think that we are only talking to criticize, I want to tell them that the best advice they have had in this quarter of the year is this one. And the sooner they do it, the better. Because Kenyans will force you to rescind the 7 shillings fuel levy. Kenyans will force you soon to rescind the 8% additional VAT that was introduced. Kenyans cannot shoulder the fuel price disruptions on their own. Our economy can also not afford to shoulder any additional cost. It is now beholden and on the side of government that a time has come for Kenya to lower VAT on fuel products. And a time has also come, which is now, not next month, now, for Kenya to rescind the additional 7 shillings in fuel levy that was instituted when the global oil prices were falling. We've been talking about the issue of securitization. And those in government only had the opportunity to criticize the messenger, not the message. Now, a time has come for you to see the reality with your own eyes. That the 7 shillings that was added in 2024 was illegally again securitized by the government. Now that illegality has to be undone because it is now the global economy, the local economy is in a desperate situation. And a desperate situation always calls for desperate measures. We must act when there is still time on the table. And the action, as I have enumerated, is that we have to do away with the taxes and levies. Because the other alternative that the government has is to institute the subsidy again back that was happening in 2022. So we are waiting to see the same people who criticized vehemently the subsidy. We are waiting to see then what they are going to do. But we are offering them a very clear solution, and we hope they are going to take it. Those in government are also on record in 2022 claiming that the oil industry in Kenya is full of cartels, because they were questioning then how fuel is higher in Uganda, is lower. Fuel prices are lower in Uganda than they are in Kenya. A time has come for them now to answer Kenyans the same question they asked. That at this particular time as we talk here today, in all the regional economies, that Kenya has the highest fuel prices. What an oxymoron is that? That Uganda, all their fuel requirements pass through Kenya in our port. That the people in Uganda are paying lesser. They are paying less at the pump than Kenyans are paying at the pump. That even with Iran and the rest, that a person in Tanzania today is paying 20 shillings less per liter of petrol than a Kenyan is paying. That a person in Rwanda is fueling their car at a cheaper price than Kenya. Those are the things that we must confront now. That yes, we need our economy to grow, but we cannot grow our economy through wishes and words of mouth. It must be through action. And one of the action is to lower the input cost. And the higher input there is in terms of production and in terms of consumer products, it is basically energy. And the bigger part of it is fuel. So I want to say this, that fuel prices, and I'm repeating what I said before, were at the peak in the May of 2022 when the oil per barrel almost approached $120 per barrel globally. And around that time, fuel in Kenya at that peak was around 1 shillings to petrol, and with that 1 shillings in terms of diesel. And when you input even the subsidy that was given, assuming it's actually not there, oil prices were still marginally cheaper at the pump when the global oil prices were at the peak. And therefore, Kenyans have to know what is this that happened, that even when the global oil prices were falling, Kenyans were not enjoying the decline in fuel prices here in Kenya. And there are two primary reasons, which I want our leadership to confront now, not tomorrow. Because waiting for this crisis to happen, then we start being reactive. That would be a misleadership. One is that this government added a VAT of 8% in the year 2023 on fuel. That made, therefore, the VAT per liter of petrol that Kenyans pay, it was pushed to around 25 shillings per liter. In the year 2024, when the global oil prices were falling in the third quarter of the year, the then Minister for Transport issued a gazette notice that again added fuel prices in Kenya by 7 shillings in terms of fuel levy. So the reason why Kenyans actually never felt the decline in oil prices over the last several years is because the government took advantage of that and instituted additional taxes and levies. Now, in an oil-producing country, you have many instruments you can use to lower oil prices when you are an oil-producing country. When you are an oil-producing economy, there is only one element you can use, actually only two, you can use to ameliorate the matter. And one is dealing with the forex exchange rate, because most of the fuel is imported and paid through dollar. Even in Kenya, what you hear G2G, them saying they were paying through Kenya shillings. After 6 months, you still have to pay dollars. The long and short of it is that we expect nothing less than the government calling themselves to order, stopping those grandiose, ego-soothing meetings they are doing, and realize that Kenya is facing a crisis. And it's not the work of Kenyans to wake our leaders from slumberland of wishes. They ought to know better. They come, serious meetings needs to happen. They need to write a bill as they did in 2023 when they were adding 8%. They need to do one urgently to cut VAT on fuel. And the minister in charge of transport needs to issue a gazette notice rescinding the additional 7 shillings that was added on fuel levy in 2024. And additionally, the greedy banks that participated in this illegal securitization, a time has come for them to pay for their greed. They must give a moratorium in terms of the 7 shillings that they are now purportedly collecting, which is 32 billion a year. A time has come for them to now book that money into their non-performing loans, because it will be a non-performing loan soon. It was illegal to securitize. The banks knew it is illegal. It was illegal. But because of their greed, they went ahead to play the tune and to dance on the tunes. Everything that is profitable has also a pitfall of the current situation we are having today. So the same banks that celebrated in this illegal act of securitization, it is now time for them to pay for their greed. Very lastly, it is now an opportune time for Kenya to know this animal called G2G, what it is about. Because many colors are painted on this monster. But the monster called G2G is just a cabal of patronage. And I want you to do your homework. Even Kenyans, please check the changes that even happened to the companies that deal with G2G. And you realize it is all politics. After the reorganization of this government, what was shared was not just positions. It was also spoils. That is why you realize some companies were added who belong and are owned by political actors into G2G program after this current mongrel of a government. Why? It had nothing to do with dollars and fuel prices. It had everything to do with monopolizing the imports of fuel in Kenya. And it is no coincidence that the same people who are the real owners of G2G companies